Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. That's actually one of my most favorite pieces on the piano. That was beautiful to hear. So in thinking about what I wanted to share with you today, I was aware that this is just a few days before the New Year's, and a time of reflection for many of us. Looking back on the year that has just passed, kind of looking ahead with our intentions, our hopes for this new year to come. And I wanted to open the sermon today with this passage from Mary Oliver that always touches my heart. I'm just inviting you to receive these words and just notice what arises for you. She says, "I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" So noticing and receiving these words, what arises for you? The pull of your heart. What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And this is, for me, one of the beautiful things of coming together as spiritual community, is asking these questions, sharing our reflections, supporting one another in living the answers to these questions. And I hear certain themes come up again and again in these reflections. Wanting to slow down and be more present with our children, with our partners, with one another. Wanting to be of service in some way in our communities, to the earth, concern for this planet. Wanting to bring more stillness into our lives, time for contemplation, meditation. The wish to bring more gratitude into our daily lives, living with more appreciation, these tendencies sometimes to get into the busyness, addressing all of the needs and concerns that are here, and really wanting to balance that with a sense of appreciation for what's here. And then, of course, how we relate to ourselves, wanting to touch into this intention of really holding ourselves with more kindness, more care, letting go of habits of judgment or criticism. So again, just reflecting for you what arises. Where are you living consistently in your life with these intentions? Where is it more challenging? And we find when we're living aligned with these aspirations, with these intentions, there's often a sense of well-being, of meaning in our lives. You know, this sense of like, I have to remember this. This is what matters. Not wanting to forget. Maybe in an aliveness, a sense of flow in our lives. And then I hear also from people, again, we know this, how easy it is to lose these intentions, to lose these aspirations, and find ourselves acting out of our old habits, our conditioning, we might say, in the Buddhist tradition, these habit energies, particularly when tired or under stress or distracted. And there's a story in the Zen Buddhist tradition of a man on horseback just furiously racing down the road, just charging full steam ahead. And this man on foot kind of calls out to him, "Where are you going so fast?" Just charging down the road. And the man, as he races by, kind of yells over back his shoulder, "I don't know, ask the horse." Right? So it can be like that at times in our lives, just being carried away by life, losing connection to what most matters, finding ourselves so easy to fall into our old patterns and behaviors. So this understanding of wise intention plays a central role in the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist tradition and practice. In the suttas, the Buddhist scriptures, it's said that when our actions are grounded in wholesome intentions, then happiness follows like the wheel of the cart follows the hoof of the ox. This very natural connection, this very lawful connection between living from our wholesome intentions and experiencing greater ease, happiness, and peace in our lives. So we're invited to reflect, to see clearly when we act. Is this rooted in wholesome intentions or in unwholesome intentions? Unwholesome intentions like greed, craving, ill will towards others, or in wholesome intentions like generosity, kindness, or the wish to avoid doing harm to another. And it's important to know when we talk in terms of wholesome and unwholesome, it's easy for us to hear this through our Western ears and have this sense of judgment, of being good, maybe of punishment and reward. When we speak of wholesome intentions or skillful intentions in our tradition, it's not with this flavor of judging, of good or bad. It's really more with this sense of being grounded in wisdom, of seeing clearly what direction do we want to go. If we want to lead our lives with more happiness, more peace, more ease, what leads in that direction? Seeing clearly. And reflecting on our intentions in this way can become a kind of a touchstone for us, or a spiritual compass. Seeing clearly more of the time in our lives before speaking or acting, what direction is this taking me? We could say, is this taking me in the direction of suffering for myself or others, or greater well-being? And we can see how this goes hand in hand with our mindfulness practice, that it's challenging to practice with intentions in this way if we're not also practicing bringing mindfulness to what's here in our present moment experience, seeing clearly what's here. All right, so you know for yourselves the difference, how it is to be present, grounded in our bodies, aware of our thoughts, our feelings, our intentions, and those times when we're more on automatic pilot, you know, like the man on the horseman just racing along with everything that needs to be done, you know, maybe noticing if that's where we spend our time, particularly in times of stress, of difficulty, more in our thinking minds at these times, less connected to our bodies. And seeing that so much of the time when we're disconnected from our intentions, it's because we're not truly present. We're not truly here. So just inviting you briefly to bring awareness into your body, just noticing, feeling the contact with the chair, touch, contact, feeling your feet resting on the floor, noticing the mood in your body, the energy. Is there a feeling of fatigue or tiredness? Is there an openness, a presence? Just noticing what's here. maybe touching into sensations of breathing. Really simple practice, noticing what shifts when you just simply bring the intention to notice what's here in the body, grounding into the touch points, just asking simply, what's happening, what's here in the body? The most direct path back to present moment awareness. Leaving the ways in which we get lost in our thinking minds, our judging, our planning, and just simply returning to presence through mindfulness of the body. And one thing that starts to happen as we bring our mindfulness practice more into our lives and we start to practice more with intention, with wise intention, wise resolve, is we start to see more clearly our thoughts, our feelings, our motivations, and we'll likely begin to notice that a lot of the time what's here is a mix of intentions. That maybe with our work colleagues, we have this intention of wanting to be collaborative, supportive, wanting good relationships with our colleagues. And then we might also find ourselves wanting to be right or wanting it to go our way. I have a friend that said, I thought this was kind of cute. She said, I don't always need to be right, but I sure hate being wrong, right? And I just thought, how human, right? So seeing that in ourselves, or seeing all of the suffering around us right now, all of the many people who are struggling, and maybe this intention arises in us to want to be of service, to want to be of help, to want to share of our time, our resources. But then maybe there's also this part that comes up, but what if there's not enough for me? Or what if I give too much? What will be left for me? Again, this mix of intentions that can be here may be holding us back from giving. Or I'm hearing from so many right now, seeing the divisiveness, the separation, how that's fueling this fear, so much pain right now. And wanting to keep our hearts open, wanting to be more of a source of connection in the midst of this separation, this anger, this pain that we're experiencing. And then finding ourselves seeking out angry editorials or sharing stories with friends about those people, right? Kind of falling back into some of these maybe less skillful intentions. So we will all have a mix of more and less skillful intentions. And again, knowing this is never about shaming ourselves, judging ourselves. It's really this intention to see clearly what's here. This is what's here. How can I practice with this? Touching back into our intentions and seeing how it's easier for us to practice this way and seeing more clearly what's here, that often it's this mix of intentions. So I found this to be, and I invite you to practice with this, I found this to be particularly fruitful in practicing with mindful speaking and listening. So just noticing what happens when you bring awareness into the body, grounded in that presence, more connected with what's here, what's happening internally for me, and noticing the intention in speaking. Is there an intention to connect, to create more harmony, to understand, to share in a way that can be heard from others? We might notice those times when maybe there's more of a flavor of tension that we'll likely feel in our bodies before even coming into conscious awareness of just some needing to be right, or irritation, or maybe some judgment of the other person, wanting to correct. So not about trying to be perfect, Really, in our practice, it's about bringing this intention, this attitude of curiosity and kindness, really wanting to see even more and more clearly and deeply what's here for us, seeing the edges of where our own practice can be challenging for us. And we find how some space can open up when we take this attitude of curiosity, of interest, and just sort of seeing, getting to know our own patterns and habits, where we get hooked. And can be very heart-opening, really, to practice in this way. Just this returning to these intentions, these aspirations that can really begin to, when we make this a practice, can really begin to flavor our lives with these intentions. It's like, how do I want to show up? How do I want to show up with this? And yet grounded in compassion for this human who is still learning, who still falls into these old habits. And every time we find ourselves getting hooked and we see this, it's this simple practice of returning, of coming back. There's an analogy I like of being the force of these habits, of these patterns of behavior as being like this large ship or barge moving through the water with a certain momentum, right? There's this certain forward momentum. And when we're practicing with intention, it's like we're taking the wheel and we're sort of shifting course, like this is the direction I want to go. So there's this shifting course, and there's a certain momentum to this ship. And this coming back to our intentions again and again is like holding the steering wheel steady. So there's just this returning again and again, and gradually this ship, this barge with this forward momentum, gradually begins to shift course. It's a really beautiful image, particularly for those of us that may have this attitude of like, okay, I've set my intention. Like I'll sometimes say, like, okay, I've set my intention to be patient. Am I there yet? Like we can bring that, right? So I wanted to end this sermon today with some really beautiful words from Dr. Martin Luther King. And he shared these in a sermon just months before his death. He said, "If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And if every now and then I wonder what I want them to say, tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. And all the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Many, many thanks.